Hello, everyone, and welcome to Nasqaa, the North and South Q&A featuring myself, Heath, and my co-host, State. How are you, buddy?
Yeah, good, mate. Really good.
Tonight, we are answering questions not from ourselves, but from the North versus South FPL podcast listeners all around the world. We got a lot of good questions that have been built up over the last few weeks. They very kindly got to us, and the way things have worked out with the international break, we thought, let's give you guys one full podcast. And rather than a North and South Q&A for a specific individual, State and I are going to answer these questions together. We'll do the best that we can. So let's get firing.
Well, we've got first question. It's from Liam SH. So Liam Liam So from Liam Sh. So with many key players being so expensive, it makes it hard to fit them in with a good bench. Where should I invest, in my first 11 or my squad? Do you want to kick off with this one? What do you think?
I mean, I think that's a really good question. I think that every season there's many different issues that are kind of like occurring during FPL season. Like, I think last year with COVID, it's not really happened as much this year, but COVID last year was a big issue. And therefore this year, now I'm going to tell you how I play it, State. I'm sure you've got a different way. But for me, I always try and get a very good 12. I want to, especially if I've got Chelsea defenders, or for State, in State's case, Man City defenders, or Man City players, Chelsea players, in fact, because where I'm a bit worried and concerned that my players may not play every week, I want to make sure I've got one very good sub coming off the bench. And if that means that I lose points because they're on the bench, so be it. That's what I've kind of agreed in my own head for the season. And what I would always have is my 13, 14, and 15. So obviously sub goalkeeper as well. I'd always try and make sure that I have very cheap players who are guaranteed to start. So like a good example is Tino Livramento at Southampton this year, who's an absolute bargain, and Ben Foster at Watford, who's playing in his only 4 million. So for me, I would always make sure I'd have a very good 12. And then the other three, I will basically sit back and kind of to a certain extent hope they don't have to come in. How about you, State?
I like my bench predominantly to be players who are playing as well. You know, I'd like to try and get 15 out there, or 14. Let's be more honest. I couldn't give a dilly squat about my subkeeper. To be fair, don't waste any money on your subkeeper. Get it as cheap as possible. If they're a reserve keeper, or if they're playing, great. Like you said, Ben Foster, cheap as chips, and that, I'm not too fussed about that. But yeah, I want to get 14 players who I know are regularly playing and starting pretty much, if I can do it that way. If worse comes to worse, and Heath mentioned about obviously picking Chelsea players or City players, which is what you do want to do, because they're going to score you most points more often than not. You've got to always anticipate the old roulette game that sometimes Pep plays, Tuchel sometimes plays as well. So I like to sort of think, if I can have 3 people on my bench who I know start more often than not, then a week like Musa Sissoko does for you, Heath, you star man, but at least he's going to get you a couple of points, and that couple of points can just make a difference.
I think for me, there's one issue at the moment that's kind of happening in FPL, which is someone around, kind of getting in Tino Livramento, him being your second or third sub every week, and people are kicking themselves because they haven't got him in the starting lineup. But you have to convince yourself and remind yourself that you had the strategy at the beginning of the season, that players like him were going to be your backups, and happy days if he's scoring points on your bench. But the fact is that he's there just in case your FPL&a's or Cancelo's aren't coming in. If you really genuinely think that he is good enough to be in your starting lineup, well, then you've got to make that bold call as the season goes on, and then get someone else cheap.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. Bloody show some balls if you think it's going to happen. Don't fanny around thinking, "Oh, what if I'd have done this?" Well, just go ahead and do it. That's another thing I'd say. But go use that gut instinct sometimes. Look at the fixtures, maybe, if you want to go into a bit more detail. If you looked into the fixtures recently, you've seen Southampton have had 4 very good opportunities to win games, keep clean sheets, and they've done it in 3 games. So if you're thinking about it now, you're too late. So sometimes my fault going off on one, but you can like you said, Eve, you've got him in there, and if you start worrying about, oh well, he keeps scoring points, well, get him in. He's scoring points. He's in form. Unless they're playing against Liverpool or Man City in the next game, then get him in there. But then again, they kept a clean sheet against Man City. Southampton have kept 5 clean sheets out of 11 Premier League games this season already. They're just shy of 50% there. They've got Norwich in the next game, so they could easily get to 16-12. And I'll tell you what, if I've got a defender at that money, and he's kept 6 clean sheets in 12 games, he's starting every week basically for me, because that's not bad odds. You'll take that because you don't expect your defenders to get you clean sheets every week, but every other week, that's a nice juicy 6 points for you, pretty much guaranteed. So yeah, stop thinking, get him in if you're thinking like that. What else has Liam got for us? Liam has got, who from the South can match Salah? Lukaku and Kane haven't got going this year. I'll answer this. Nobody, Liam. Nobody. I don't need to explain myself.
I do think that Heung-min Son, if Conte gets Spurs firing, I think Son could be the player. I still have my doubts about Kane. Lukaku, I think, does need a bit of time. He's coming back from his injury, hopefully, after this international break. But yeah, I think Son could be the player, but I just don't think he'll get close to Salah, really. I think he's the kind of player who might score in 2 or 3 games, or he just doesn't have the same consistency as Salah. But Conte's, yeah, I don't know. The thing is that we've spoken about Conte before, and he is someone prone to playing a back 5. And is he all about getting the clean sheet? And does that kind of like stop Son from getting those points? Well, someone's got to get them, and yeah, I'd put money on him being the star for Spurs whenever they play. Especially with Kane seemingly looking like he might be going to City in January, or if he's not, he still seems a bit kind of frustrated at the fact that he hasn't got the move. So
I'll tell you how Kane could match Salah is if he plays against San Marino and Albania most weeks in the league. Then he could probably match Salah, because he could get the goals and the points that way. But yeah, like I said, I like how you tried there to give a productive answer there, but for me, pointless. There is no. You need 3 or 4 players to match Salah from the South, because they're all shit.
To be honest, like the only person who was showing signs of that at the beginning of this season was Antonio, but you know he can't he doesn't get that up. So So to answer the question, Liam, I just don't think there is really. I think Son's the only one that comes close, but that's still quite far off, I think. So okay, well, we'll move on to the next set of questions, and this is coming from the fan of the show, Marcus Jackson. His first question is, do you think that FPL has an adverse effect on our enjoyment of the game?
Most definitely. Of course it does. Oh, you're looking at the games that are on Soccer Saturday. Whatever you do on a Saturday, whether it's, you've gone out for a nice meal with the missus, or, looking after the kids, or you play football or cricket, whatever you do, whatever it is, you're looking at the scores, but you're straight away on, right, who's got the goals? Who's got the assists? Oh, so they're keeping a clean sheet. Awesome. I've got so-and-so in my team. You're looking at these things. And then, you see that City are 4-0 up, or you see that Chelsea are 4-0 up, and you're like, none of your players are scoring any of the goals or getting assists. And it gives you and you're like, what a load of crock, it gives you that bad feeling in your head. It's like when you see your team, which, you'll regularly get this heap, when your team concedes a goal, not doing how you want them to be doing, you get down about it. And it's the same with FPL. You want your FPL team to be doing well, because you're in leagues with mates. You might be doing head-to-heads. You're in a group, and someone's going to be spouting off in the group saying, oh yeah, got so-and-so in my team this week, captained him, blah, blah, blah. And everyone's trigger happy, aren't they? Whereas you're just like, yeah, I've got bugger all happening in my team. So of course it does. It affects your enjoyment big time, because you're invested in FPL. If you manage to separate that enjoyment and keep that enjoyment levels at it, regardless of what your FPL team, please send me a note of how you do it, because I'd love to take that on board. But I just don't see it being possible myself, because of that investment you get into it.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm 100% behind State saying I think personally it's improved my watching of the game. Like, I actually decide to watch games specifically because I've got 2 or 3 FPL players playing. If say for instance it was Norwich versus Brentford or something, and I had Ivan Toney or Bomo or whoever Raya, I might watch the
On my
game.
Bomadelli.
On my Bamadelli, yeah. If I
On my
had any
Bomadelli, yeah.
if I had any of those guys in my team, I would be thinking I'd be up for watching that just to see how they get on. And I'll be honest with you, I don't even know if I would still watch football as much if FPL wasn't around. I mean, apart from Watford, but like realistically, to a certain extent, I guess maybe I would probably be more into gambling or something like that to add more enjoyment to the game. I don't know. I think maybe our generation is slightly different to the new generation coming through who only really want to watch highlights and aren't massively keen on watching live football. And there have been talks about the idea of changing, football in a way that makes it more appealing to the younger audience. But I just wonder, like, I mean, I guess in a way, I suppose if you're intrigued by something, like there are some football games out there that are really entertaining, and we've had a few this season, like for instance Liverpool Brentford, that forget FPL, that game was one hell of a game. You would watch that quite happily.
Yeah.
But like where you have like certain managers like Jose Mourinho have come into the game, over the years and has sucked the fun out of it by playing this defensive minded football at times, depending on the team he's got and what their form situation's like. But when you're seeing 1-0s and 0-0s and I don't know 1-1s, and there's teams like Burnley and I hate to say it, I mean probably even people probably look at Watford in the same way, but playing football in a certain way that you just kind of think, don't really want to watch that. But if you've got Ashley Barnes or if you've got Matt Loughton or something, then Burnley are suddenly an interesting team to watch. So it certainly has. And again, for me, it makes football so much more enjoyable.
So you're invested in it. Your interest is there, isn't it? And definitely perfect.
I think his next question's kind of going down the same kind of lines, but as I'm sure with many people, how we enjoy a weekend of football may hinge greatly on the performance of our FPL team. What do you think makes us as players so fiercely competitive to our detriment, and we can no longer watch a game as a neutral with zero player bias? I'll go first with this because I was just going to say, like, for me personally, I think that FPL is almost like a job, like a fun job, but it's a job nonetheless, that you have to log in to this website to change something about it, whether it be your formation, whether it be a sub, whether it be a transfer, whether it be your captain, whoever. You spend a lot of time thinking about that, and you put a lot of effort into that. And I think that really does mean that, if you do well, you're on top of the world. All those decisions you've made have, paid off. But if you don't, and it goes the other way, it really does get you. There's been a lot of talk about people and mental health about this. And I know some people will laugh and go, it's just a game. But for some people out there, this isn't just a game. This is something they spend a lot of time on and they work hard at it. And the fact is that, like State says, you be in your group chats, you're getting riffs from your mates for not doing well. We've had people. One of my mates deleted his team out of the league halfway through the season. It was completely random. And honestly, I felt bad for him, but it was also quite funny. But now thinking about it, maybe that wasn't the best way of doing it, just laughing in his face, because maybe he was having a real hard time about it. But at the time, I just thought, he's just,
Brilliant.
but a bad loser, because that's just the way I look at things. And that's probably the worst way of looking at it. He probably needed a bit of help with that. But unfortunately, we weren't so sympathetic. But I think it's the amount of time. If you played the game blind and you just took a chance on anything, or I think there is that thing you can just start the season, basically let the game pick your team and just let it go. Yeah, of course you wouldn't care because you've not tried. It's the amount of effort you put into this, and everyone's in this day and age. Everyone's busy. Everyone's got things going on. That's the reason why we only want to watch highlights and why the next generation only wants watch highlights because we're busy as people. We've always got things going on, and therefore, if you're going to give this amount of time to something, has to pay off. And if it doesn't, then you're frustrated. What do you think, mate?
I can't disagree with you, to be fair, on those points, because it is that, and you can see from like looking at the Twitter community, all the podcasts out there and stuff. People take this seriously. They enjoy doing it. They enjoy taking it seriously. They want to try and achieve something. There's that ranking thing. Can you get into the top 100,000? Can you get in the top 50k, top 10k, top 100? Because somebody out there is in that sort of bracket, and they will take it seriously. And I think it's it's like you said, it's for some people, it's it's their way of life. It's what they do. It takes them away from whatever else they've got on in their life at the moment. FPL could be that it's their thing, it's something they enjoy doing, and like I said, when you invest time in something, which a lot of people do, you're gonna do that. And but then I think he mentioned there was something in the question about having sort of potential biasness when it comes to, obviously, you're seeing your players and looking at them thinking, oh yeah, they're doing well and stuff like that. And that's natural thing, in my opinion. You can't help but have that biasness. At the end of the day, it's always going to be there.
When you watch a game and you've made a decision, like you've kind of looked at a player and gone, oh, I'll have a bit of this, like, so let's just say you brought in, I don't know, Cancelo, and you're thinking,
as captain against Man United.
Yeah. And you're watching
the example,
and you're watching the game, and you're thinking to yourself, everything he does, it just, that's the reason why I brought him. He's such a good player. Let's probably go to the other scale. Let's not stick with one of the better players like Cancelo. Let's go for like Omobamidele. There you go. You're watching Norwich City, and you're only watching him as a player, and therefore you're thinking, hey, he's doing all right. He's doing this. He's done that. Oh, he's played that well. It's good control. And you're thinking, and this is why I'm going to put in my team. Why he's on my bench. Why he's getting the 2-pointers and stuff, whatever. He's kind of delivering the, well, I was going to say the gold, but not so much at the moment. Maybe Neil Smith can get something out of him. But well, I don't know. Do you get that when you're watching a game where you feel like you're justifying your decision by, like Marcus says, about
if they're doing well? Yeah, of course you are. But I know what you're saying. You try to look for the good in them, and sometimes, you can then be blinded by the fact that, look, they might be doing something good, but are they scoring your fantasy points? Probably not. Sometimes, and I think sometimes you can then sort of put yourself, like you said, there's the flip to the coin. Your friend who left the league or something, was this team doing that badly, and he could have been watching the game thinking, yeah, I'll just put Harry Kane in. He scored 6 goals in his last 3 games. I'll put him in. He couldn't hit a barn door now, sort of thing. And he's like, yeah, I'm just cursed it. I'm picking that. So there is the flip coin, and I'm pretty sure there are people with the glass half empty type people who will be thinking it on the flip coin, when they're watching the games and thinking, oh God, he ain't gonna score me points, blah blah blah. So I think it can work both ways, can't it? To be fair, like everybody can, I think. But I personally, do look at it and think, oh yeah, he's doing good things, and you are looking to justify it, and like I said, try and give your ego a nice rub in the right direction and stuff.
All right, okay. So this next question's just for you, State. So head to head with your legendary co-host Heath, how confident would you be at the end of the season if both of your MVPs had their points removed from their final totals? So this would obviously be Salah and a Southern player to be confirmed, perhaps someone like Son.
That's a very, very interesting question. If you're a self-proclaimed legend, what does that make me?
I'm only reading what he's put on the question.
It's a good question. Well, okay, I'm gonna do a Rafa Benitez. I'll try and do some sort of accent, but it won't be anything like that.
It's probably best not to.
I want to talk about facts.
No, okay? Definitely don't do the accent.
No,
I don't know what that was.
Well, I'm going to talk about facts, okay? In my northern accent, facts, right? So, almost all points get deducted from my entire team's tally right this minute, okay? 117 points come off my team, right? That would then put me on a grand total of 531 points right now. Heathie's on 538 points. So who's the player you've had in all season? And you've had Son in all season, haven't you? Okay. So your Techie's what, 50, 58 points off. And guess what? I'm still winning.
Wouldn't your best player normally be your captain? So wouldn't it be you taking out the double points?
No, not always, Heath. Not always.
So
I'm not talking like that, because I'd have captained someone else who'd be a superstar and score me back to points. Cancelo, there you go, another 68 points then from Cancelo. All good. It'll make life closer. Put it that way. It would make life a little bit closer.
I don't think you've actually had a good captain outside of Salah, and then this week Cancelo of Sod's Law, but I think you would be.
Because I think I've only captained Salah, to be fair.
That's what I'm saying.
I captained Ronaldo once. Yeah, but someone's good. But yeah, I mean, look, I understand the question, but if I was to take Salah out, I'd have found someone who was still scoring me some points. Yeah, not as much as him. But
I'm gonna throw it out to Marcus Jackson and say to him, can you do your research and find this out for us, please? Because I genuinely think I would be smashing it. Although last year I would have lost comfortably.
You wouldn't be smashing it, because, like I said, your captains, they haven't done well for you this season, but you take away 58 points still, you're still in for some big trouble. I think it just make it competitive. I'd have probably had someone like Mane if I didn't have Salah. Well, no, I definitely would have done. He's got 59 points this season, but so I'd have had an adequate replacement lined up. The beauty of being up north is you've got the better players.
Yeah, no, we'll see. There's a long way to go. New managers coming in, manager bounces.
Oh, they got rid of the legend that is Heath. Is that what you're saying?
Oh no, there's no manager bounce here. It's still very flat.
Never mind. Don't worry, lad. He'll come for you, I'm sure, and you'll get to rub my face in it when you come back at some point this season. So it's fine. But no, it's a good question. I think you look into it. Obviously, realistically, I'm sure it'd make things very close if I didn't have Salah. But I think your problem with that is Heath doesn't have an MVP really. That's the problem.
No, but I think that is the point, though, isn't it? It's the fact that my points have been spread around the team, whereas yours have gone to a specific player. should we move on?
Players. Yeah. You could have had Reece James in the last 3 weeks where he scored.
I know.
Chose not to put him in. That's the difference, you see. I have the ability to pick the players who are going to score the big points. He just relies on cumulatively from a team, which is clearly not working this season.
That's better, Quater. He better be back.
Yeah, he's not exactly a big point scorer. If you're not going Reece James or Ben Chilwell from the Chelsea defenders, you've got issues with yourself, and your board will be talking to you about that in the next meeting. Yes.
Yeah.
So anyway, but good question still. So moving on, we've got Deej next. Deej. So Deej's question, I'll let you answer this one here first. How much attention do you pay to finding differential players, or do you just stick to buying players with a known pedigree, sort of past performance is no indicator, is put in brackets, past performance is no indicative of future results?
Yeah, so I'm just going to, when I read this question, I did think to myself, I'm just going to go back to the very beginning of the season. How do I pick my team from the very start? And then I'll move on. So just to kind of give you an idea. So what I do is my team will always start with an initial group of players who score highly from the season before, Salah or Son being an example, someone like Trent or Cancelo. And then I move on to, once I've kind of got a certain amount and I know that I can't have too many big players, then I'll look at any players who have got a good set of fixtures for the first 5 game weeks. Or I suppose if we're going through the season, I'll be looking to bring in players who have got good fixtures for the next 5 game weeks. Then I'll have the ever presence to certain teams. So you're looking at players like Rafinha or Antonio, the cheaper players, the ones who you can, you don't have to worry too much about having too many of those because they're not massively expensive. But they're going to play every week for their respective team. But you know that you're probably going to have to take them out if they're playing Man City away or Liverpool away, really, because you're most likely going to see a 2-pointer. After that, any new players who look good value, but maybe a differential. A good example would be Tsimikas. I couldn't obviously pick him, but a lot of people were picking him first couple of game weeks of the season because Robertson was injured. He was 4 million. A lot of people took a risk on him. And then now Robertson's injured again. People are talking about him again. He's good value for money. Livramento is a good option, actually. Now that he's got going, he's not necessarily differential now because a lot of people know about him. But he's a good example of someone who's good value. And then your differentials are your promoted players, your players with poor fixtures, injury prone. So like someone like, I would say, Callum Wilson, injury prone, promoted player, someone like Ivan Toney. And then as the season's going on, I will then look to jump on differentials who have basically gone above and beyond. So someone like Mahrez and Vardy, the season Leicester had that great season. They were both so cheap. It was about how quickly could you jump on someone like that? How much faith did you have that they would carry on with the way they were playing? I've got to be honest here, I think that was one of my worst seasons because I didn't have any faith in them whatsoever. I just thought it was always going to come to an end and that Man City and Chelsea or whoever would win the league, which didn't happen. And then someone else like Kane or Ali, Kane, young player coming through at Spurs at one point, only 4.5 million. It's a big risk to put him in your team early on because you didn't know how good he was. And Ali coming from MK Dons, again, very cheap, didn't know how good he was going to be in Spurs, and both of them thrived initially. But I think basically what I'm trying to say is you can't have a team full of the best players because you can't afford them, right? But you've got to have like different pockets of different players within that team. And I think when it comes to differential players, so like Conor Gallagher right now, he's a really good example of a great differential player where you know that he's cheap for a reason. He's not the best player in the league, so therefore he's going to be fairly, he's playing for a team like Crystal Palace where you weren't sure if they were going to be fighting relegation or what. I find that I paid attention to the differential players once the season gets going, and I've given them a couple of weeks to work out how they've settled into a team and stuff like that. In that first kind of team you pick, you can take a risk with one or two, but realistically, you don't want to take a risk with too many because if you find yourself with a differential player who's not hitting and he's struggling, say for instance, like Norman at Norwich, like we can see he's a good player. He's be a fantastic differential if Norwich start getting results, but he's scored one the other day, but he's not really done a huge amount. So you'd be kicking yourself if you had him over, say, Gallagher. Gallagher's been, scoring, assisting, been in the mixer. He's even doing it away at City. So it's just about kind of like knowing when and where to go with the differentials. And for me, I just think that the reason why they're differential is because they're a risk. And it's all about managing your risk, not having too many of those players. So, yeah, I would say that to answer the question, I guess, and that was a very long-winded way of saying it, but 75% of my team will be known players, good pedigree, and then 25% differentials, and that's including my bench. So that's how I would do it. And I'd have maybe one or two risks. And then as the season goes on, I would imagine that it might get more 60-40, and I would have, maybe less known players and more differentials as they go on because I've kind of given them a chance to settle into their respective team.
Good answer. And I think, a lot of insight there as to the way that, people should, definitely take a look at it and different ways to look at it as well. I mean, my own thoughts on it. I mean, you say a number of things there. I mean, the Tsimikas thing at the start of the season, for me, it was an obvious one. I had him in those first few game weeks when Robertson was out, and you hear good things about him. Ask your mates about him. Do you know much about this player or something? But I think the other thing, looking for differential is right. Like, he mentioned about newcomers to the league, but look for those players who are maybe out of position. So, you people who have been down in FPL as defenders, but playing as midfielders, for example, like, last season, Stuart Dallas, he was down as a defender, but he was playing.
Lundstrom at Sheffield United,
Lundstrom.
that was
Yeah, a
incredible.
few years ago, Lundstrom. But they were playing as like a midfield four. They were in there and they were getting forward, scoring goals. And if the club kept clean sheets on top of it, brilliant. You're getting 6 points. But they were getting forward and getting goals and assists more because they were playing further forward. It's like, you then move up a level. Look at your midfielders who are actually playing up front. I'm not saying the obvious ones like your Salahs and that, but I'm saying, for example, in this season, Cornet or Cornet, however you want to refer to him, he's basically playing that number 10 role with Chris Wood right there. And he's down as a midfielder. And he's, 6 million at the moment. So it's looking at those people. Rafinha at Leeds, he's 6.5, but he plays in the front three, Rafinha, and everything goes through him. And he's the one who's doing it. So, differentials like that. I know probably a lot more people have got Rafinha in because of, last season he was quality for Leeds. But, that's what you've got to look for as well. Players who have been put in incorrect positions by the game's failure to realise that they're not playing in that. Take advantage of that, to be honest with you. I'm not slating, well, I am slating the game a little bit there, but that's a different beef I've got. But, use those things though to your advantage. Play them, and have them there.
That can also work against you though. If you think about
it can,
Aubameyang last year. I mean, I remember when we first started doing this, and I had Aubameyang in without a doubt. It was like, well, he's obviously not a midfielder. He's definitely a striker, but they've put him down as a midfielder because Salah's in the same position, so they had to do that. And he had a dreadful season, and it was such a waste of money. But it again, that's still a risk, isn't it? But there are certain players, like you say. I mean, Trent is a good example of someone who is technically not out of position, but is because he plays Cancelo
but the way the team lets them play is the huge benefit there, isn't it? You look at the teams like Liverpool and City who are going to be dominating most games in terms of possession, being in the other team's half as well. So those players are going to get the ball in more dangerous positions, and that. So you've got to be and using that to your advantage, basically. So
I'd tell you the other thing also, just to add to this as well. The way that State and I play this game means that differential players aren't as important because we don't have to worry about so much about, kind of, I can't get Trent in, I can't get Salah in. So therefore, I actually have, plenty of money to work with. So it's like, that's really not a huge problem for the way that we play the game, in the fact that we can only pick, State can only pick Northern players, I can only pick Southern players. So that's not really going to affect us in this way of playing it. If you're playing it like normal players and you can pick anyone, you have to have differentials. You just have to have some, because otherwise you just, and I tell you, the best time is when you have differential players. I think I had Souček last year and he just, he was brilliant. Maybe, in fact, no, sorry, maybe it's the year before. Yeah. And he was just absolutely brilliant because he was like, deemed a holding midfielder, and he was just scoring from every corner. And it just seemed like every chance, every chance West Ham had, they were struggling at the time as well. So it was 2 years ago, the second half of the season. It was just brilliant. And the other one was at Soufal as well. He was brilliant as well because he was just playing like a Cancelo or Trent. He was miles up the pitch and he was getting in really good positions, getting assist after assist. West Ham weren't keeping clean sheets that year because they were struggling against relegation, but he was getting points, whatever. If you had those two in at that point, you were absolutely laughing. Yeah, I mean, for me, that's what I think this is what fantasy football is all about. Taking a chance, taking a risk here and there, and when it works, rubbing it in your mates' faces.
Always, you've got to do that.
You have to
do that. If you don't, you're silly. What's the point in playing the game?
Exactly. And this is the whole thing about it. I know we're kind of going a bit up and down with this, but there are people out there who do struggle when it's not going their way. But for me personally, my advice to anyone is if you find yourself in that position, you have to really evaluate what you're doing with this game, because for me, it's still a game. You should have fun with it. If you're not having fun with it, do something different. Try something.
Yeah.
Like basically, I mean, there's all sorts of ways of playing this game, but for me, it's like if I'm having a bad season, I'll just take all sorts of risks. I think I've got nothing to lose. What's the point of finishing if I'm not going to win my mini leagues? What's the point of finishing second or finishing 10th? It doesn't matter. So make Antonio captain, triple captain against, Norwich or whatever. Go for it. No one else is going to do it, really. So just take a risk, enjoy it. And then basically when it doesn't happen, or if it does happen, brilliant, happy days. You might kind of catch up on some people. If it doesn't, then, realistically, you take another risk, an even bigger risk or something. You bring in a player that you would never normally bring in, no one else has. You look at the percentage owned or whatever, and just bring players in who aren't owned very heavily, and just see how you get on. But yeah, I just think that for me is quite key. I really want to emphasize that, where it's the fact that if you're really struggling in this game, take a step back, think about it, and ask yourself a question: should I be this stressed about this? And if the answer is, I am stressed, try and turn it into a game. Try and turn it into fun again, because you're not going to win the game. Let's be honest. In the top 1,000, maybe 10,000 one season, if everything goes to plan, but you're never going to win the game.
Someone
really.
wins it. Someone does.
Yeah, but out of 8 million, I mean, come on.
Yeah, it's difficult. It's difficult. Yeah, you gotta. It's needle in a haystack type thing, definitely.
But yeah. In a way, my logic of if you're not going to win it, you might as well not bother means that probably every year I shouldn't have been bothering.
Yeah, well, you'll think that after this year as well, I'm sure. Good first question from Deej. He's got another one here as well. So, do you care about the fluctuations in squad value? I mean, I'll answer straight away. I couldn't give a diddly squat about my squad value, to be fair. People talk to me about it. Yeah, no, it can probably benefit you because you can sell some players. If your squad value is higher, it means you're obviously, you could sell players for more than you bought them for. But I've never been that interested in my squad value, to be fair. It's never bothered me one bit. I just want to, I know it means that if your squad value is high, your players are going up, so they must be performing. But I don't really pay attention to that. Them scoring points tells me if they're performing. I don't need a squad value to tell me that personally. So for me, it doesn't bother me.
Yeah, I think for me, it's the icing on the cake of when I'm doing well, I'll kind of like give myself a pat on the back, and I'll start looking at, squad value as if like, of course it's 103.2 million at the moment because I'm doing so well this season. Everything's paying off. This guy's gone up in value. I only really look at it if I'm doing really well. And to be honest, I've not done that well for a couple of years, so I've not really cared too much for it. I think value-wise, I'll always look at if let's just say I've got a player and I need to take him out, he's injured. I'm definitely taking him out. And the player I want to bring in has just had a really good week. That's the only time I care about value. It's when I'm worried about not having the amount and I don't want to make a second transfer or third transfer. I don't want to feel like I'm forced into a transfer early, but if I have to do that, that's the only time I really look at what the value of, kind of players, but squad, not really. I'd say only when I'm having a stormer.
Yeah, no, like I said, no, completely agree. Don't bother me in the slightest. And then finally, Deej says, why is George's team called the what? Well, it says club, but spelled CLWB. Is this some southern thing? This doesn't sound like a northern thing.
No, I don't. My guess is that it's a tribute to his favourite TV show, Gavin and Stacey, because that looks like a Welsh spelling of club with a W in there. Because those Welshies, they just throw all sorts of letters in all sorts of orders. Now, the only other thing I could think of is that maybe he rushed his team sign up and he didn't check his spelling. I don't know.
W and U are nowhere near each other on the keyboard, so that's not good. And then he's done what the kids do. I've been told, sick in brackets, SIC. I mean, seriously, mate, if you're not feeling well, then go see the doctor.
Deej is like, I think probably our age, or maybe I think he might be either slightly older, slightly younger. So
Deej, start acting your age, son. Come on now. We're not these people. Okay?
What do you think? Why do you think George's team is called the club?
I was trying to think, is it some sort of sandwich, maybe, like you get a BLT or something like that, but yeah.
The CLWB.
Yeah, the CLW. So I'm thinking what it could be, chicken, lettuce with bacon. Yeah, there you go. I'm going with that because that sounds so much better. That does, to be fair. Chicken, lettuce with bacon. That's why his team's called Club, spelled with a W instead of a U. Yeah, thank you. I've answered that well.
Do you know what club sandwich stands for? Like club.
What, the actual club sandwich?
Yeah, because obviously you got BLT, right? Bacon, lettuce, and tomato, right? But did you know that club stands for something?
Because they used to get sold in clubs. I don't know.
No, this is the thing. I think this might be a Kirby Enthusiasm thing, but it's chicken, lettuce under bacon. Do you know that?
Yeah.
And that's why I thought you would know that, because it sounded like you'd gone down the same lines.
No, I don't like lettuce, so I'd never order.
So yours would just be a cub.
Yeah,
chicken
much,
under bacon, just nothing else, just chicken and bacon.
Carnivore, mate. Carnivore. I'm
get rid of that green.
Yeah, I'm the T-Rex in Jurassic Park, mate. Just meat. Give me the meat to hunt. Thank you. That's the way forward. But yeah.
Well, Deej, I think the answer is we don't know. Sorry.
No. Yeah, sorry, Deej. Yeah. Oh dear.
Okay. So let's move on to our next question from our next listener. So this is from Ross. I only put one question out there. Very lazy. Sorry, Ross.
Sorry.
Do you think the bonus point system is fair, or does it tend to reward certain players more than others?
I think the bonus system is difficult to do it, but I think it definitely tends to favour certain players more than others, especially more now. I mean, I think we discussed this actually briefly in a podcast a little while back about, in particular, goalkeepers getting bonus points and stuff, and how a keeper like Nick Pope, who had a great year a few years ago, got getting bonus points galore, making lots of saves and stuff like that. But if he does that well now, he doesn't seem to do it because his pass ratio is not as good. He's not pinging passes out. He's not. A lot of these ball playing keepers, their stats go up because they're getting more touches on the ball, they play more passes. You've got people like Edison, pinging 60-yard, 70-yard balls onto Phil Foden's first touch and getting assists, sort of thing. So I think for goalkeepers, it's definitely favouring the ball playing goalkeepers more than just a keeper who's doing his job. He's been told to get the ball forward. Why should he be punished for that? Just because
it's the other way around, mate. It's the fact that Pope did get a lot of bonus points because he wasn't playing out of the back, because his defenders wouldn't play it around the back. So the whole bonus point thing was that Man City defenders are more likely to get bonus points. So Edison isn't going to get any because they play the ball a lot and they get the ball a lot and they pass it and complete a lot of passes. Whereas Burnley defenders don't do that.
I ain't seen it. I ain't seen it.
So when Pope had that season, he had a really good season. He was getting bonus points all the time, was because he was making a lot of saves, but Burnley's defenders weren't getting bonus points because they don't play the ball out from the back. It goes over their heads basically from Pope's long clearances. So that it was the other way around. He was getting loads of bonus points because they weren't playing out from the back. Whereas like Edison, for instance, won't get bonus points because if they keep a clean sheet, the bonus points will go to Cancelo and maybe Carl Walker or Diaz, because they'll be playing the ball intricately around with Fernandinho and whoever, and it will just be constantly getting the ball in defence. And the only time Edison's going to get bonus points is if he gets an assist or if he saves a penalty. So you're right, it does favour some over the others, but it's actually the other way around when it comes to which players. And yeah.
it shows how much interest I've
Well,
probably taken in the bonus
yeah,
system.
no,
Because,
and
you know,
this is what I was going to say. I think you're right, and I think that that's the problem. I think that your casual FPL fan needs to know just as much as the person who's just stuck his team in, and the person who focuses on his team, you know, hundreds of times a day. You have to have like a kind of an agreed way of putting those bonus points together and then sticking to it, but keeping it as simple as possible so everyone can understand it and therefore we know who to go for. At the moment, you don't really have to be a genius to work out that you don't want to have any defensive midfielders. And realistically, you don't have to worry too much about getting excited about goalkeepers because, again, they'll get a clean sheet, but the only time
unless they save a penalty.
yeah, they get the save points and they'll save penalties. But realistically, the save points only really happens when they're playing against the better teams. And then you probably won't likely pick them because you think they won't keep a clean sheet. So it's quite tough with goalkeepers. I don't think people care too much for them, really. I think that they're probably the position that we probably care about the least. And then defensive midfielders are just non-existent in FPL unless you're looking for a third sub and you want a Musa Sissoko or you want a Josh Brownhill, whoever, just to put as a third sub and just sit there all season. But yeah, no, the bonus point system is not fair, but it's like reliable. It's kind of like easy to kind of understand at the moment. So if you overcomplicate
player gets goals. Yeah, your player gets goals and assists, he's going to get some bonus points.
Yeah, but if you overcomplicate it and you start going defensive midfielders, if they make tackles and they start getting bonus points and all this kind of stuff, I think it would just be too much for the casual FPL fan. I think you just need to say, what's the most important thing? Clean sheets, goals, assists, bang, and like you say, penalty saves or whatever.
What if they went off something like then, whoever's doing the commentary for that particular game, because every game in the Premier League has a commentary, whether it's radio, whether it's on telly or something like that. What if they get them to dish out the bonus points, 3, 2, and a 1. So
yeah.
then someone who has an absolute. I mean, how many games has N'Golo Kante been man of the match on Super Sunday when Chelsea won the league a few years ago, or Leicester? Probably loads, but he'll have got no bonus points in that game, even though he was probably a key factor of them winning the game.
I just think it's very tough because if, for instance, Kante's had an incredible game, but then I don't know, Kai Havertz has scored the winner in the last minute. If Kai Havertz hasn't scored that goal, even if it's a tap in, they don't win the game, right? Kante can play, he can do that all day long, but they don't win the game because he hasn't scored the goal.
But Kante has broken up attack after attack, which stops the other team possibly going on and scoring 2 or 3 goals. And it sets up the game, and helps do the starting all the moves, of winning the ball back, pushing forward, doing the pre-assist or whatever, and gets no recognition.
But what's the hardest thing to do in football?
Well, score a goal, probably. Well, I suppose
anyone can tackle, anyone can pass, anyone can cross, and all this kind of stuff. So it's the whole idea is that.
Don't know. Do you see Paul Scholes? Paul Scholes can tackle.
He likes feet though.
Oh yeah, he does. Yeah.
That is weird. But I just think that with that's where it's tough. I mean, we used to laugh about it. I think the bonus point system has improved over the years because when I used to FPL 5, 6, 7 years ago, my mates and I used to always laugh at the fact that someone like, let's just say, I don't know, Carlos Tevez or whatever, just does absolutely nothing, just hangs on the last defender all game, does absolutely nothing. And then a last minute scores, gets 3 bonus points. You're like, he's had an awful game, but he scored the winning goal. It was always that thing. It didn't seem fair, but at the same time, I guess to a certain extent, it is that whole thing of that. I think that they work out bonus points for strikers or any position, but it's something about the percentage of the chances you've taken. So if, say, Tevez hasn't touched the ball all game, but scores the winning goal with his first shot on target. There's 100% shot kind of ratio. That looks really good. Like, and therefore he gets free bonus points.
There's an app you can use for in-game sort of bonus points as well. So if you want to take more look into that.
There
sort
is,
of thing,
yeah, there is.
So, yeah. So you can do that. We're not here to advertise it because it's unfair. So
no, and personally,
to find it yourselves. But
personally, I've not used it myself because I just think that would overcomplicate it for me. I don't think I would enjoy it. I think I need to just kind of go back to everything's all about being simple. If you overcomplicate anything, then your brain gets scrambled and you lose interest. So it's all about keeping it as simple as possible and just going to yourself, I know I don't have to worry too much about goalkeepers. So I could go 6 million goalkeeper and keep him there all season with a 4 million like backup who's not going to play at all. And then never ever pick a defensive midfielder in your starting lineup. If you're going to have them in there, it's only for value, and it's because they're very cheap, and you stick them third sub and you just don't touch them all season. Basically, like your backup goalkeeper, or with your goalkeepers, actually, you can always go for the 4.5, 2 for 4.5s, and rotate them around. But yeah, so I would just say I don't think the bonus point system is fair, Ross, but I don't think that I necessarily want to change it too much because I just think that it kind of just
about works. Option, maybe. Yeah, fair enough. Brings us on to our next person, FPL _Senate, the FPL teacher, who's an avid listener and gets in touch on our Twitter page. So thank you for sharing our podcasts. What's your ideal starting 11 with 3 Chelsea, 3 Liverpool, and 3 Man City players? The remaining 2 are up to you to add in there.
All right. So what I read from that was that there was no value on this. So I was just going to pick the best players, like the FPL players. So I've got Edison in goal. I've got Trent, Rudiger, Reece James, Cancelo, Diaz, Salah, Mane, Fernandes, Lukaku. I'm missing a striker. Antonio.
So my goalkeeper, I'd go for Mendy in goal. I think Chelsea keep more clean sheet personally than most teams, so that's why Mendy would be my one. Defensively, Trent Alexander-Arnold, Reece James, Cancelo. That's I think 3 definite stays there. So I've used 2 Chelsea players already, which is fine because I'll leave the last one till later on. So my midfield ones then. So I then go for Salah and Mane. Excuse me. Salah, Mane. I also go for Phil Foden, which is a second City player. And then I also went for he hasn't had a great season so far, but I think he's about to start coming good. I then went for Kevin De Bruyne as my third Man City player to use up. So
yeah, good shout.
So there you go. Yeah, so that leaves that. And then I've obviously got one more Chelsea striker to put in there, who would be Lukaku, my Chelsea player. And then I would have then Cristiano Ronaldo, and I would go for Jamie Vardy.
I knew you'd go Vardy. You absolutely love Vardy, don't you?
Well, his stats tell you why. So,
He's old. Doesn't do anything anymore.
He's got 7 goals this season. How can you say that? What a ridiculous thing to say.
Just got lucky.
Fuck it. I'll tell you what, if he's got lucky, I'm liking his luck given the last 5 or 6 seasons.
How's he got on in the last couple of weeks?
Yeah.
He's run out of steam. His pre-season's kind of dried up already.
He's had a nice break now and he's going to come back good again. Don't you worry. He's run out of steam. How's Harry Kane doing for you this season still?
I'm not part of the Harry Kane Appreciation Society at the moment. He's
in your squad though, isn't he?
He's on my shit list.
And answer my question. Is he in your squad?
Probably, yeah. 7 goals in 2 games. Got to be in there.
How many goals has he scored in his last 3 Premier League games?
Not enough. That's my answer. Going back to the 3 of each of those teams, I would say De Bruyne is the only one you picked in there that I would think actually on any given kind of season I would pick De Bruyne, but he's just, it doesn't seem to have be going for him at the moment. I don't know if he's got a niggling injury or something, but just doesn't seem to be getting any assists or goals.
I think that'll all start changing. He's obviously had a bit of time out, a bit of injuries, and they've not rushed him back because they've not necessarily had to rush him back. But
No.
I think he'll start coming good now. But I suppose he's looking like he's playing a little bit deeper as well, which sometimes will then mean he's not going to maybe get the additional goals that he's had in previous seasons, and maybe he might be the pre-assist person, but he's still going to take free kicks, corners, and stuff like that as well. But I think he'll start playing a lot more regularly now. Obviously, he can't be affording to drop many points because, obviously Chelsea are doing really well. And so I think, they're going to be playing him, whether it's a deeper role, more advanced role, he's going to be the one dictating the play for them. And I think he'll start coming good. Would you consider rolling with it for the next 4 to 6 game weeks as well? I'm guessing it means the teams that we just said. Well, yeah, but the only problem is we probably won't be able to afford it. That's the only issue, I think, with that question.
Oh, okay. I read that wrong because I thought he was saying, would you consider rolling transfers? But I think I just read rolling and just assumed transfers. And my answer to that FPL teacher is I'd always consider rolling transfers whenever I can, and then look forward to taking 2 transfers, maybe even 3, and take a hit. Just so it's like a mini wild card. Always enjoy that. In fact, I've rolled my transfers this week, so I've got 2 glorious transfers to look forward to before this game week coming up.
Yeah.
Hello, Reece James.
Yeah, talk about being late to the bloody party. Yeah,
only slightly late, only 4 weeks late. Yeah.
Would you target Man United as a fixture like Norwich, Burnley, Leeds, and Newcastle?
Yeah, 100%. For me, I look at Man United and think flat track bullies. I just see them as a team that if they score first in any fixture, they then become very dangerous because they've got a really good counter-attacking set of players. I think it is a bit flat at the moment at United, but I do think that they have the tendency, if they do score early, to basically put a lot of pressure on these teams. And these teams at the moment will be fancying their chances against Man United and may open themselves up a little bit more than they normally would do. But when you got players like Bruno Fernandes, Mason Greenwood, Marcus Rashford, and obviously Cristiano Ronaldo, trust me, I'll be playing. If I could pick Man United players right now, I'd have 2 or 3 for that run of fixtures, definitely.
Yeah, I think, especially, I think you look at United away from home, they're very good away from home because they can play that more counter-attacking style, which they're clearly better at because of that pace. Look at them. I mean, away from home this season, they've won, I think, they've beaten Spurs, Leicester, West Ham, Wolves. So they've won 4 and they drew 1 game with Southampton. That's what they've done. At home, they beat Leeds, they beat Newcastle. But then, since then, they've lost to Villa, drawn with Everton, and lost to Liverpool and Man City. So what does it tell you? This away form, I mean, I think they're unbeaten away from home in the Premier League in a ridiculous amount of games. I think they've set a record on that, to be fair. So away from home, I think United's game suits it because they hit on the break a bit more. They sort of play that way. Whereas at home, when they've got to try and take the impetus on, that's where they seem to sort of struggle a little bit. So I would view Man United as at the moment, an away team to pick when they're playing away, pick their players, get them looking at those. They've got Watford and Chelsea away in the next 2 games. I mean, everyone will fancy them to beat Watford, I'm sure. Even a lot of Watford fans probably might do. Chelsea, they could definitely go to Chelsea and get smoked with the way they play away from home. This final question. Do you embrace or try to eliminate your biases? Like, have you got confirmation bias, trusting support players or you own, recency bias, how much last game week decisions, hindsight bias, Salah Hall's predictable after it happens, people say, but pretty predictable beforehand, I think. But what do you do do you embrace it or do you try and get rid of those things, Heath?
Yeah, so confirmation bias. So trusting XG to support what you want, what players you want and stuff. Personally, I do not worry about statistics. I look at fixtures. I look at form. I never look at stats. I never look at XG. I never, and this could be my detriment. It could be the reason why I'm not, doing that well at times. But for me, it's just all about the element of instinct within my brain when it comes to FPL. I look at players, like I say, right now, I'm looking at Conor Gallagher, should have had him in a few weeks ago. I'm looking at Reece James, should have had him in 3 weeks ago. Livramento, should have had him from the beginning of the season, but for whatever reason, I don't have them in. And I just like they're all form players at the moment. They're all kind of like players that I don't even have no idea what their XG is right now. But I'm just thinking they've been scoring big points. I should be bringing them in, which then works towards my recency bias, which I don't personally have recency bias when it comes to the last game week. So like whatever happened in last game week, I'm not too fussed about, unless someone scored a hat trick and could have had more chances. I'll think about them. So like Antonio, if I didn't have Antonio, he scored a hat trick against, let's just say, Aston Villa. He could have had 4, 5, 6. Maybe I might pick him, but I would be thinking I want to see another week. I'd like to see 2 weeks. So I have recency bias when it comes to maybe the last 3 game weeks. Maybe if they've been performing for 3 game weeks in a row and I haven't got them in my team, they've got to go in. That's my recency bias. So I wouldn't have it specifically just for one. I'd have to have 2 or 3 to kind of back up the first one. And then hindsight bias, always 100% have hindsight bias, 100%. If I've done well and I picked a good captain like Harry Kane, let's just say he scores hat trick, I've made him captain, I'm convincing myself that I'm an absolute genius, and that I knew all along that was going to happen. When it doesn't go to plan and things don't go the way I expect them, then I convince myself that I made the right decision, even though things don't go to plan. So, for instance, where you might have Livramento on the bench and he's scored and he's kept a clean sheet, and you're thinking, oh, he's my first sub, he's not coming on. I'll convince myself that I'll say, just like I said at the very beginning of this podcast, the reason why I've got him as a first sub is if Chelsea don't play all the defenders. They played all the defenders, Todd's law, and therefore he's not coming in. Don't worry about it. That's the way I kind of tell myself. So I have hindsight bias in that sense. How about you, mate?
I definitely don't try and eliminate biasness. I don't have the capability to do it for starters anyway, so why the point trying to eliminate it? Not for me. And yeah, I don't really look at XG myself, to be fair. It's not something that I tend to look at. Like you said, I like to look more at the, what's the form of the player, the fixtures. I think, I get a feel of that. I think, with XG, I mean, you probably like to think you've got a little bit of an understanding of our thought process behind it yourself anyway. I guess I know it doesn't match what the stats say necessarily, but I think you get rough ideas on those things. So I won't really go too much in detail because I pretty much agree with what you said there. The recency bias. Who doesn't go into that? I think the only thing I might differ myself with is that I'll probably take a few more gambles after a one good game week. What I'll say is like, let's take an example like Smith Rowe at Arsenal at the moment, obviously in great form. Now, what I would have done when Smith Rowe had his first, real good point scoring bonanza against Spurs, if I didn't have him in at that point, I'd have been getting him in then. I won't be waiting a week or two and then looking back at that. I'm sort of person who will be thinking, well, look, he's done well there. He's going to be confident. The next fixture is looking all right. Yeah, they are. Let's get him in now and let's hope the ball continues and work it that way. That's how I sort of do it. I probably, look at just the previous one because I'm hoping that strike while the iron's hot. You don't want to miss the boat, or you don't miss the gravy train, so to speak. So I'll probably not, look back necessarily, 3 games. Obviously, yeah, you do, I'm guessing, but if someone's had a good week, and I look back and they're like, oh, the previous 2 weeks weren't good, but I'm thinking, well, this could be the start. So I'm definitely considering getting them in.
You kind of have to remind yourself, though, that if you were using that Emil Smith Rowe example, that you're not just bringing in a random person to fill an empty spot, you're still taking someone out. And therefore, you would assume that the person you're taking out, you've put a lot of time and effort into thinking about why they should be there. So, for instance, you've got Rafinha and he's in your team, and Leeds it's just not working for him. You decide to bring in Smith Rowe. Unless Rafinha's injured, then realistically you're taking out a player who's got potential with another player who's kind of hitting form or looks like he might hit form. But that's the reason why I'm always a bit skeptical about that. But yeah, that's fair enough. I get you. I guess, like I say, there've been all sorts of, using the example earlier with Jamie Vardy and Riyad Mahrez, that Leicester City season, incredible season. The earlier you got them in, the better you did that season, because their value was just off the hook, crazy. And if you kept hold of them, and if you dare captain them as the season went on, especially Vardy, I mean, scored, what was it, 11 games in a row, so in that period.
Yeah, he got the record, yeah.
Yeah, it looked like every time he shot, he scored, basically. But yeah, I mean, it was such an odd season. Like I say, I that was, for me, a really hard season, because I didn't have any faith in Tottenham, didn't have any faith in Leicester. And they were the two arguably fighting for the title, arguably, because in the end they won it quite comfortably. But yeah, if you had Vardy, Mahrez, and someone like, I don't know, like Wes Morgan or Fuchs or someone, Danny Simpson or something like that, and you got that early, then you were having a good season from there. So yeah, I mean, the earlier you can do it, the better. But you don't want to be making you don't want to be making transfers every single week, or more than one transfer every week, because you don't want to lose points. We're moving on to Johnny Lawson. So defenders like Trent Alexander-Arnold and Cancelo, are they underpriced given their output?
Probably would have to say so. I mean, look at Trent, for example, right? Last 3 seasons, he's got 185 points, 210, 160. He's got 64 points at the moment. He's the 3rd highest scorer in the game at the moment, behind Cancelo and Salah. Now, yeah, granted, they're going to generally start, lower. But, I mean, if you look at, for example, the points of advanced players up the pitch, sort of thing, he's scoring just as high points as, high scoring midfielders who are deemed, essential halves in the league. So, yeah, I mean, it's hard to argue against it, but at the same time, I suppose there's always that feeling with defenders. Well, how long is it going to last that way? The team's going to start trying to force them to just play deeper. Can they do something about it? But yeah, I mean, I don't think there should be a cap on it at all. I don't think there is. I mean, Trent, what did he start this season off at 7.5 million, which is very high for a defender still. In this game, I think it's reaching new heights at the sort of price that he was at. He's up to 7.7 now. So he's gone up 0.2 million. Mo Salah's gone up 0.5 million. Should Trent have maybe gone up 0.3 million by now? Probably so, because Cancelo's gone up 0.4 million, and he's got only 3 more points more than Trent Alexander-Arnold. So why has he not gone up as much as 0.2 less? It's because of that price. Obviously, they don't want to start pricing out defenders, but you can make the game more challenging by doing that. Do they have a cap on it? I don't hear you never hear from anyone saying, oh, we've got a cap on defenders, we can't do that. It looks like there's a sort of like a cap line, doesn't it, from looking at it? But at the same time, there shouldn't need to be.
No, I think you're right. I think that the fact is that there hasn't really been a time in football where one of the best teams in the league has a fullback taking all the corners and attacking free kicks. Like, even when I think back to someone like Dennis Irwin, who might take a penalty every now and then and maybe a free kick, he still had a lot of other players around him who were sharing that around. Ryan Giggs, for instance, or Lee Sharp. Realistically, it's really quite unique to have someone like him. And then when that's happened, it's almost become quite fashionable that your players, again, back threes back in the day were kind of seen as risky, really. Like, you know, where you're going to get the most out of your players, your team by playing a back three. Well, nowadays, so many teams play it, attacking wing backs, and I always seem to start the season with a really good back five of attacking defenders, because I just think that's where it's more fun. You know, you want to have defenders. You don't want to have defenders who keep clean sheets. You want to have defenders who might get an assist or a goal every now and then. Like, for instance, Trent, Cancelo, Soufal, even Luka Din. You know, there are all sorts of players who take corners. Luke Shaw actually now taking corners from both sides. He was taking it from one side last year. He's now taking them from both. How is that happening when you got Bruno Fernandes on the pitch? You know, it's just it's crazy. But then that's the method they've got with. You know, he's obviously one of the smaller guys on the pitch, and they're thinking to themselves, Bruno's not bad in the air, or he can sit on the edge of the box, good striker of the ball. So put Luke Shaw on the corners. And obviously Luke Shaw, to be fair, does take a good corner, but that then makes him quite a good. So I would say that if you compare him to, say, Ferran Torres or someone like that, or Riyad Mahrez or something, who would you rather have? Either of those two or Trent Alexander-Arnold? If Trent wasn't a defender and he was midfield, you still have him in at 7 million or 7.5 million. So I would say that I wouldn't be surprised if he's, unless he gets an injury or something, that he's 8 million by the end of the season, maybe more. And then next season, the FPL will have to go with 8 to 8.5, which would be unheard of, but it totally makes sense. There shouldn't be a cap.
Couldn't agree more with you. Couldn't agree more. So that takes us on to Pavlos. What are your thoughts on Fantasy Premier League allowing a budget for a squad of 25 at the start of the season? People managing their squads and transfers only being allowed in the transfer windows. So basically doing what the Premier League squads are, having that 25-man squad and yeah, you know, being given a budget for that, I guess.
I think it's a really good game in itself, but I don't think it's a very good business strategy for FPL themselves, because I think that they want as much traffic coming through their website as possible, so their sponsors obviously give them more money, and therefore they've got more chance of keeping it going. I would say that if you give everyone a 25-man squad, they won't be as excited. Purchasing something used to mean a lot, and it still does when it comes to fantasy football. So if you have a squad of 25, you take away that excitement factor. If you have a 25-man squad and they're having a stinker of a season, you've basically got nothing to get excited about, and therefore you're only going to be substituting your players into that starting 11. For me, there's nothing really. Maybe making a captain would be something that you might think about, but you've always got 25 players until the 1st of January, and then it becomes exciting again for a month. So I just don't think it would be a good idea. I like the idea as a game in itself, but I just don't think it would be very good for FPL.
It's called Championship Manager.
Yeah.
I think, but I see where he's going with the idea, and Pavlos, and pretty intense, and he's got interested in trying to select that 25-man squad at the start. But like you said, you go taking into effect a lot of factors as well, and you're gonna, whatever budget was decided upon, what you get for that, you're gonna sort of struggle, and then you're adding in more stipulations. Well, you can have 4 players from per team. Then also, you'd have to take into effect, well, look, in the Premier League, in those 25, they've got to have the next amount of homegrown players. So would you have to do that? Would you have them, with those restrictions we put on you? So, I like the concept of it, but I agree. I think for FPL, it probably just makes it a bit too much.
And you would be surprised at how much time people can spend on their website looking at different options who they could transfer in for that coming game week. Like, I know it myself, like, especially when I'm doing a wild card. Jesus, honestly, I will be on that website like every day without a doubt. I don't know for how long, but I'll be probably spending my lunch break looking at it. It's so sad. But when it's wildcard time, I get right into it. I'll make millions of transfers because basically in my mind, I'm thinking my first, and it's a little little hint out there for you guys. When you get your wild card and you know you're going to make it, and it's inevitable. Let's just say this game week coming up, I know that I'm going to play my wild card for the next game week. What I would do is I'd play it straight away. As soon as this game week starts, I'll hit the game, the wild card button. Make sure you hit the wild card button. We've had some horror stories about that. And basically bring in all the players who have hit form, irrelevant of whether you're going to keep them or not. Make sure you don't make sure you don't transfer any out players who have gained some value that you might want to keep. But just basically anyone who looks like they're going to drop value, any players you're injured or whatever, any players you don't want anymore and you know that you're not going to need them or want them, get rid of them as soon as possible and get all the players that you think are going to go up in value. And then as the game week goes on and you get closer to the next game week, you can then decide, do I want, like, I don't know, Conor Gallagher? Do I want him? He's gone up to 6 million now or something like that. If I hadn't have made that decision like I had done, I might be buying him for 6.1, 6.2 rather than getting him at 5.9 or something. I mean, they don't go up massively in value, but sometimes you can do it over an international break where it's 2 weeks, and that can see them go up in value if they've had a very good time of it. So that's my little tip there, really. But yeah, I just think that, like I say, it could be quite a good game in itself, and in a way I guess the draft is not too dissimilar, right? You can bring people in and out, but it's really about the squad that you've got, right? And that hasn't really been that successful, the draft. I don't know how you think about it, mate, but I don't know many people who are playing it. And if they are playing, I don't hear many people talking about it like they do the normal FPL. I thought it was a great idea when it came out, but
I mean, I do like the draft, and I've played it in the past, definitely, and stuff. I think it's quite good to just have that select squad. I think the way it fails is people are reluctant to do trades. I think that's what really bothers me about it. There's lack of trades going on, and I think that people don't want to trade the best players. You've got to really sort of convince somebody.
If someone gets in Salah in game week 1, then
well, that's it. And you then relying on who's got the trades at the end of the day. So I think that who's got the first pick in the draft, they're going to go for Salah. Who's got the second pick, they're going to go for more likely Harry Kane. A lot of the time this year wouldn't have worked out for him, but more often not, it's going to work out. And I think it's good to have some competitive edge in it, and you've got to then work within the restrictions in your side. I think the key with the draft is you've got to have a set number of teams in it where it's not too bad, where you're struggling to get any players at all, when it comes to like the 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th picks in your squad where you just can't get anyone who's actually playing. I think you've got to have not go too many players in your draft league. I think 12's probably where you're looking at as a good number, between 10 and 12. There's enough players, but then you can also, there'll be players available if your player's out of form, and you can, trade them off the free transfer list sort of thing. I think those things can work quite nicely for you, but it's an idea, but I don't think the draft's taken off as well as maybe they'd have hoped. But I think, that's because the main game is that good. So
yeah, I guess so. Yeah. Okay, well, we'll move on to our next listener. So Convi has come up with, he's got 4 questions, in fact. So the first one is, who can you see being a breakout young star in FPL for the second half of this season? You can't say Michael Bridges. But I've got 3 that I'm going to say. I've got the guy that I've mentioned a few times on this podcast, Michael Elise at Crystal Palace. I think once he gets past his injury and he starts playing for Palace regularly, I think he'll be a star. Whether he gets that next level, because they've got that Eze, I think he might be back in January, but obviously I can't really claim him because he was a breakout star last year, really. But whether Elise hits those heights that Eze did last year, I'm not too sure. I've got Brian Gill at Spurs. Now that Conte's come in, just think he's a good young player, and
think he'll play.
Well,
still.
that's the thing. I think he may do. That's the thing. He's a talented guy. It's just, I guess, it didn't fit into Espirito Santo's kind of game plan. So maybe the new manager, he might be brought in. And the other guy was Joe Geldhart at Leeds, who's like the young Michael Owen, or as described by Jermaine Genius, young Lionel Messi, which was ridiculous.
Mm. Yeah. I mean, no, yeah, the potential, it's like the potential's there. And I mean, the reason I'm struggling on it is because I don't know whether these players are going to get the opportunity or not. I think if they got the opportunity, they could definitely do things in that. I think the only one who potentially is looking like he's getting a few opportunities already is the lad Anthony Gordon at Everton. And especially given Everton's current form, why wouldn't you look to someone hungry like that? He's a very good player, well thought of. He played against Spurs. I've seen him on Match of Day. He looks lively. We've talked about him on Match of Day. I saw him in the under-21s the other week, last week as well. He scored goals, and I think he's probably the one who stands out for me. I mean, you've got the lad Palmer at Man City. He ain't really going to play much though this year, and not in the Premier League anyway. He might get some games in cup competitions, but I'm struggling to see who's going to really sort of take that on really in the second half of the season from a lot of clubs. If truth be told, at the moment, I think it's just a lot of clubs are. If they're looking at breaking people through, they're probably going to go sign people in January. That's what tends to happen, and not really the young lads who are going to come out. They generally come out in the first part of the season. I feel, and the second half of the season, clubs go and buy them. But that's why I sort of struggle. But I think Anthony Gordon, if you had to maybe put somebody on that, I think he's one to maybe look at, because I think he's starting to break into that starting Premier League side, and with Everton struggling at the moment, why not? Get that. He's hungry. He wants to prove a point. He wants to be there, and he can make a real big name for himself. So he'd be the one I would go for out of anyone if I'm forced to have a pick.
Yeah, I think like the thing about the January transfer window is that if you get all your deals done, there realistically there doesn't really need to be youth players coming through, but there are certain teams like Everton seems to do quite a good job of this. Palace do a really good job of this, where they have an idea of bringing in a fullback or bringing in, maybe a young striker or a young wide player or something, someone who's not going to make a huge dent in the team if something goes wrong. The second half of the season is the time. I agree with you in a way, but if you're free of relegation, but you're not going for Europe, that's the time to play young players. If you're an Arsenal or something like that, you might try certain players or something because you're not going to get into the top six or something. I mean, they might do this year, but
I know what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, my only other thought could be, Liverpool got a couple of good young lads, and with the African Nations Cup, maybe a couple of them could come in. Harvey Elliott, Curtis Jones comes back. Obviously, Curtis Jones started making a name for himself, a season or two ago, but maybe they could sort of then push into that when the likes of Salah and Mane are away, maybe, because Liverpool are going to have to do something there. And they're the only two of us that I thought of, could maybe do something at Liverpool during the African Nations Cup. That would be their opportunity to shine, I would expect.
Well, that leads us perfectly onto our next question. So, will the African Nations Cup or the AFCON will it impact Liverpool more than any other team?
Most definitely.
I've actually put down one other team who will be affected more than Liverpool.
You think they'll be affected more than Liverpool?
Yeah.
All right, I'll let you go. Go on then. Put your case forward.
I think that Watford are going to be affected more than Liverpool. And the reason why is because I know Liverpool have got Salah and I know they've got Mane, but I do still think they've got very good players to come in. And I'm sure that Klopp will get something out of certain players. Whereas Watford's easily best player, Ismail Sarr, is going to be gone. We've got Emmanuel Dennis, who's gone. William Troost-Ekong. We've got Imran Louza, Adam Messina. like we're going to have to do a lot of business in January to get around this. And that even leads me to think that maybe we might even sell Sarr in January to someone like Newcastle, because they could be gone for a long time, because the AFCON apparently could affect something ridiculous like 7 or 8 fixtures if they go all the way. And if I mean, for Watford, Sarr, he plays for one of the best African teams, so there's a good chance that they could go all the way. Yeah, I think Watford will. I think Liverpool will be heavily affected, obviously, but not personally. I think Watford will.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from. The losing players, they're in a relegation battle, but I suppose I don't see it that way, because I think you'll go down, unfortunately. That's not me. That's not me being a dick.
So they're not affected
realistic.
by it because they're already relegated.
In my eyes, yeah, pretty much. Yeah, they're down with the Norwich. They're not in the relegation zone at the moment, but it's just a matter of time. Whereas Liverpool, this will seriously hurt their title chances. I can't. They don't have. I know Klopp could get things out of players and that, but they don't have the players to fully replace Mane and Salah. You lose both of them. I mean, how long's Firmino out for at the moment? We don't know. I mean, so they're then going to they've got Jota. Jota's obviously going to be heavily relied on then. Ricky comes in, not going to really, deliver too much. But like I said, I suppose it's going to be an opportunity for those young lads to come in and sort of be like, well, yeah, we've got a chance here. The likes of Harvey Elliott, Curtis Jones plays a bit deeper, but Harvey Elliott can play one of the wide positions. But I think they may need to go out there and get another player to come on board.
Next question: why do Northerners call fizzy drinks pop?
When you open the bottle, it might make a little pop noise.
So it's not because the bubbles pop.
No, nothing to do with that. No.
Are you sure?
I'm pretty sure it's just one of the things that we say that word, we say a different word. What people in actually they call them barm cakes. Some people call them tea cakes. Some people call them baps.
Okay.
It's like your bed.
Okay. Next question: is it time to bring in Kane?
But this way, he's gone on to score 7 goals in 2 international games, granted against poor opposition. But if that doesn't give you a bit of confidence again, what is, you've got a new manager, one who's getting a bit more time to sort of start implementing how he wants his team to play. I'm sure Harry Kane's going to be a major part of that. He's done it over teams. He's turned players back into form. Eden Hazard did it at Chelsea. They have Diego Costa. Conte has the qualities to make teams play to their strengths, and Harry Kane's definitely a major strength for Tottenham Hotspur. So I think, if you've got the money to bring him in right now, then I think what's your better option? I don't think that, I'm still struggling to find it. Lukaku injured, Antonio not in form, but massive price difference. But if you're looking for that and you think, well, maybe you're thinking, Cristiano's not really doing as well as I want him to be doing, then why not, I guess. So I think I can definitely see why people will be bringing him in this game, because he's just hit a lot of goals, and nothing brings strikers more confidence than goals, regardless of who the opposition is, to get confidence from it, and it sort of breeds more goals.
Yeah, I kind of said to myself that, I've got him in my team only because of the way my team's structured, being a Southern team. But if I had to pick a normal team, including Northerners as well, then I would basically give him one more week and see how Conte is affecting him as a player.
A good game, haven't they, as well?
Yeah.
Leeds have not been at the best. We always know Leeds concede goals. They don't.
Yeah.
And I think Spurs gave them a scene to last season at the stadium, at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. So I think it's definitely something to. Yeah, I'd probably have him be bringing him in for this game week if I could do. If I could play a full team, I'd be looking at that.
Yeah, like I said, give him one more week. if he does well against Leeds and he's interested, then I'll be getting him in. And if he doesn't do too well and he doesn't look like he's interested, then I'll assume he's going to City in January. The answer is yes, but not sure when. Okay, that's all our FPL questions. Now, if you're interested in FPL, this could be where you finish the podcast, and good luck to you. You know, go off, do your thing, stick on, I don't know, your greatest hits of Shania Twain or whatever you want to listen to. If you, I don't know,
what?
I don't know, but if
it's always Celine Dion over Shania Twain.
Yeah, maybe that's the next question. Now we're going to go into non FPL questions, right? And I'm gonna randomly class this as extra time, right? Because we've been talking for a fair bit already. So let's just say the 90 minutes is up. So this one comes from Johnny Lawson, and this is his non FPL related questions. And his first one is: will transfer fees get so big that eventually players sign shorter deals, which will mean much larger salaries and smaller transfer fees / more free transfers? What do you think, State?
I don't think that's going to happen personally, until there's maybe a huge crash, like in the market for it all. I mean, transfer fees are big, but I think at the same time, there's, maybe the pandemic's actually maybe stopped some of that. There wasn't any, ridiculous. I can't recall there was 100+ million transfer fee in the summer this year, really. Ronaldo's 20 million. I know it's an age thing, but clubs bought in players, or Grealish was a lot of money, wasn't it, I suppose. But there wasn't. I don't see that happening for a while. I see where you're coming from, and I think that could definitely be the case when things maybe get a bit too much. But at the same time, clubs, when they spend big on a player, they tend to want to tie him down to a big long contract, a 4 or 5 year contract, because they want to get the money back in performance, in shirt sales. If he performs on the pitch for them, they'll get the prize money as well from it. So I don't think there'll be shorter deals signed for players on big money at this moment in time. I just see if the bigger the money, the longer the contract, you're probably going to want to try and time into at least, just so you can earn that money back in revenue. Because when you spend big on a big player, you're hoping they've got more than just a playing appeal. You're looking for that global appeal now. Someone who brings in the sponsorships, brings in the shirt sales, and the fans, etc. I think that's what you're looking for in that. Jack Grealish is a great example. In the summer, every England fan will begging for Jack Grealish to play in that, and no one begrudged him his move to Man City. But then that also then had effects that other nations that were watching were like, oh, everyone's talking about Jack Grealish, so they're going to start talking about it, and people getting Grealish, growing their hair like Grealish, or doing stuff like that. I think that at the moment they'll still keep him tied to a long deal. I think it'll take the market to crash before something happens. I think transfer fees will come down before shorter sort of players signing shorter deals. Personally,
I think that the trend has already started really with COVID and all that. I just think that when I play Football Manager, for instance, I will always be looking to see whose contract's coming to an end, because I just think that there might be someone on a big wage who I can get for nothing, and then I just put a lot of money into their wages and just hope that they do well for me. But there's less pressure on you if there's no transfer fee. Like Grealish has gone in there, and there's a lot of pressure. He's the kind of person who probably thrives on that kind of pressure. But if you're someone who's not as big a fan as the big transfer fees might kind of get you a little bit, then actually that kind of way of, I think that they do it similarly in the States, don't they, with their sports, where they don't really go for any money. They just trade players, but they're on huge salaries. Like they're much bigger over there than they are here, like the basketball players and stuff like that. But yeah, I think I can see that happening, to be honest. There aren't many players nowadays. Like you can actually afford to buy, like Salah. I mean, how much? Who's gonna the only way that he can actually move from Liverpool is if he's out of contract, or if I guess Barcelona, Real Madrid, or a PSG or something. Yeah, he forces a move. They'd still have to pay a lot of money. I mean, look at Kane right now. Yeah, so the amount of money that chairmen value their players at nowadays, I think it'll be quite tough for them to be spending so much money. So, and the play, yeah, again, like financial fair play, maybe that will be a factor as well, where teams are actually maybe considering that and therefore having to wait for these players to see out their contract. So, yeah, personally, I think that is the way it's going. But we differ on one of these questions for once, because we've agreed with, apart from the fact that you slagged off Watford. But okay, should the Champions League be a 2-leg knockout from the start?
Yeah, I remember watching Champions League. What it was called the European Cup, wasn't it? Back in before it turned into the Champions League, and I remember those 2-legged games. You know, Man United struggled getting past teams like Lokomotiv Moscow and stuff in the past, or they played against Galatasaray in 2-legged games and lost them on away goals and stuff. I think the groups just give the bigger teams too many chances, because they get 6 games there, and the chances are they mess up a couple, but they'll then win 3, draw 1, and scrape through. A 2-legged affair, you have one bad game and you're 3-4-0 down, you've got it all to play for, and we've seen it when you get great ties in the knockout stages, because teams have got to, some teams will just go for it, and they'll get placed, and that's why we've seen teams who've made it far, from doing stuff like that. Look at Ajax getting to the semis the other year, Spurs getting to the final, beating Ajax, coming back. I think 2-legged ties, teams have got to be on it from day one. Manchester United would have been knocked out by Atalanta if it's in a 2-legged game, because on away goals, because I put 3-2 at Old Trafford and 2-1 over in Atalanta, they've been out, on away goals there. So I think, 2-legged ties, I think, is better. I think it's more entertaining. The games have got a lot more riding on it. You have these dead rubbers when a team like Bayern have won the first 4 games and already qualified, and then the next 2 games, they're meaningless for them. If they're playing against some poor sap in the group who are just getting stuffed and already in last place, not even going to get a UEFA Cup spot, I think, that's it. I don't agree with Champions League teams coming third and going into the Europa League. Why the bugger should they deserve to get another chance in Europe after failing to get out of the group? Should they balls? If they've not been good enough to be in the top 2 in the group, don't reward them by letting them stay in Europe. Say, see you later, son. You're not getting a chance of winning European football this year. No chance.
I totally agree with all those points, mate. I think that the reason why it will never happen is because UEFA
money.
They desperately want to get the most out of, so let's just use an example as Barcelona, massive cash cow, a globalized team that everyone wants to see, especially when they had like Messi and Xavi and Iniesta. Everyone wants to see them playing as much as possible. So if they get to the Champions League, which they will do every year, because there's no chance that they're going to finish outside the top 3 really of Spanish football. So the fact is that, I mean, they might actually not do it this year, who knows, but they will basically find themselves at least 6 games because of the group stages. If they struggle in that, they're not going to finish bottom. So if they finish third, then they go into the Europa. So they get a few more games there that might get them all the way through. But if they're on song like they have been back in the day, with, like I say, those 3 players, then they're going to get 6 games, and then the last 16 quarterfinals, semi-finals, finals, and that's plenty of games. If they do a 2-leg knockout from the start, they could go out in the first round to, I don't know, Real Madrid, or they could get knocked out by Liverpool or something. That's that gone.
Definitely.
It just doesn't make sense to UEFA to do that. But personally,
no, they're not going to do it. No.
I was watching a documentary the other day, which, if you haven't seen it and you've got Netflix, please watch it. It's brilliant. It's called I Believe in Miracles. It's all about the Nottingham Forest ride from being second division relegation strugglers to, European Cup winners under Brian Clough. It's a brilliant documentary. The thing about it was when they got into Europe for the first year, the team they got in the first round of the European Cup was Liverpool. And it was a killer for them because they were hoping they would go to all these different places around Europe, go to Spain, go to Portugal, Italy, and they find themselves going to Liverpool, who at the time were probably one of the best teams in Europe. So they were, I don't know, shit themselves. They were going to go out. But the whole thing about it was that they ended up playing Malmo in the final. Now, like, you just don't get that nowadays, do you? It's the same teams every year. Like, if you're a smaller country like Sweden with Malmo, if you get a really favourable draw, you could find yourself in the quarterfinals, semi-finals, making a name for yourself. The money will be, the money from the Champions League will actually be, shared out around the nations rather than going straight to England, Spain, Italy, France. That's the problem. And it is, again, I guess we're in a capitalist society, all this kind of thing of having a monopoly on who's the best and whatever. But the fact is that is a real clear problem in football at the moment, where there's too much power where the money lies. And as much as I, love the fact that the Premier League's one of the best leagues in the world, something needs to change. And I think if you made the Champions League a 2-leg knockout, that could actually be a good start, to be fair. So personally, I would love it. I would absolutely love it. I think that'd be great.
Yeah,
and you'd want, and like, I don't know about you, but I only watch Champions League. Maybe if there's a decider, game 6 of the group games, I might watch that. And then I might watch semi-final and the final. That's it. Unless there's a real juicy game, like a Real Madrid versus Barcelona in the last 16, or actually can't even do that, can they? Because they can't be played against each other. So
if you get a juicy group game, Bayern Munich, Real Madrid, or Bayern Munich, Barca, like it is this year, then you probably might give that a watch. But
even then, it doesn't have too much bearing, does it? Because they're both going to go through more than likely.
I watched Liverpool Atletico Madrid the other week because I thought it's always tasty between them two. There's a lot going on. Klopp and Simeone always have a little bit of a niggle with each other. And then obviously Atletico knocked out Liverpool in one of the last games to have like fans and that before the whole lockdown first came in 18, 20 months ago. But, Liverpool gave him a right scene but it was good because, I knew it would be a bit of a needle game. But, more often than not, Champions League might be on. I've got BT, but I said to them, the better half, let's just put something on, like a drama or something to watch instead. I can keep an eye on my phone if I want to. I'm not massively pushed for watching at that early stage. But like you said, if there's something riding on it, you're like, Man United lost 2-0 away in the first leg to like like I said, an unfancied side, maybe a Red Bull Salzburg or something like that. And you're like, they've got it all to do in the own leg. I'm going to watch that because United got to go out firing, and otherwise they'll be in deep trouble. So if there's more riding on it, you're gonna watch it more. You'll get more people watching it, and I think that'll work better. But like I said, it ain't gonna happen. But it should be great if it could do, definitely.
Okay, well, we're deep into extra time now. So next question from Johnny. Clubs get lamented for not being loyal to managers and sacking them too soon. Yet Man United have stuck by their managers for too long. Mourinho, Louis van Gaal, and now Ole Gunnar Solskjaer are getting panned for it. What's the right balance? Panned? Is that a northern word?
Oh, yeah, panned. We say panned, yeah. Definitely. Yeah.
Getting panned.
Yeah. You'd call it getting ribbed for it or something. You guys would. But getting panned for it. Yeah, definitely. It's a great northern word. Yeah, but yeah, I think generally clubs who keep all the managers will eventually do well. Look at Burnley. They know if they get rid of Dyche, they're in dire trouble.
But do they though? But do they? And this is the thing. What if they had gone? What if they had gone out there and gone, all right, Dyche, you've only got us to this point. Let's get Patrick Vieira in. And then in he comes and he does what he's doing with Crystal Palace, playing good, attractive football, pushing them up the leagues. None of this, this long
one
ball.
Season. And
Ashley
it's not
Barnes.
even a full season yet.
It isn't, but you don't know. It's like,
You can't judge him on that yet. You know, it's like people raved about Lampard that first season, then second season they were falling apart. You know, there's something that can be said here for the consistency of the manager and team. Look, Sir Alex Ferguson, the greatest football manager of all time, arguably, you know, he didn't do anything for United for the first 4 years, really. He nearly got sacked, you know, got saved by a job, but they persisted with him because they knew what the end goal was, and then it started functioning and delivering, right?
but
Now, I'm not.
where was the power then? Where did the power
Well,
lie then?
well, yeah, it's different now. Yeah, I completely agree on that front. You know, these owners want results quicker, but you know, then again, they want if the money's coming in and the team aren't necessarily winning results. Some of them aren't that bothered. The United owners know that United are going to be in thereabouts. They're probably going to be in top four most seasons, so they're going to get the money in. So at the moment, they've been and tried Van Gaal and Mourinho, and things have not worked out even with these high level ones. So they know that Ole's got the club's best interest at heart. You know, he's Manchester United through and through. One of the bargains of the 90s, probably. You know, for in terms of what he delivered, in terms of what they paid for him as a player. And I think you know it's difficult to sort of do that. I mean, don't get me wrong. Yeah, chances are they're going to get rid of him by the end of the season. You know, I don't think they'll have to go on some really really bad run to sack him. I think before the end of the season, but I don't necessarily think he's done a bad job for United because the people before him weren't really, you know, Manchester United type people, and you know he's brought things in. They should be doing better than what they are doing against the bigger sides. But you know, I think Liverpool and City are just miles ahead of them, and Chelsea as well, and something they need to make a decision on. But yeah, for me, I think it's generally speaking, barring you sort of Contes who seems to just go somewhere and makes it work, and then he leaves after about 2 months to 2 years. He don't like staying around, hanging around, and letting his feet sort of get too dry. He likes to go and dip his feet in a different ocean, does Conte, doesn't he? So, but I think more often than not, you look at the teams who've had the success. They've got managers who've stayed there generally longer than most.
Well, what I'm going to say is that I think
Unless you're
personally,
Watford.
well, this is the thing, right? So obviously, I support a team that are quite happy to sack their manager willy nilly. Personally, for me with Watford, I don't have a huge issue with it because I'm used to it. I know what to expect. In Italy, this is how things roll. That's what happens in Italy. They
have a merry-go-round, don't they?
Yeah, in Italy, they have certain managers who will quite happily move on. They'll get promoted to Serie A, and they'll quite happily move on before even kicking the ball for the next season because their job was to get them promoted to Serie A. They've done that, then they go and move to another team and they'll try and get them promoted to Serie A as well. So all I would say personally is I think that back in the day, the Alex Ferguson days you're talking about, there's a very, very big difference to what there is now. The power is with two sets. The power is with the players because that's where the money is. You can't transfer players in and out willy-nilly, so you can only get rid of the managers. You put a lot of money into these players, so therefore you need someone to get them going. If they're not interested, then I can understand why people sack managers so quickly nowadays because the transfer windows and all that kind of stuff. But for me, it's all about transparency. I think personally, I would be a lot happier with Watford if when they were sacking these managers, they were telling us exactly why, giving us an idea of they sacked Nigel Pearson a couple of games before the end of the season. Now maybe they were saying that we felt that Pearson wasn't doing the job that we asked him to do, and therefore we gave Hayden Mullins a chance for the last two games because we wanted people to maybe express a bit more freedom on the pitch, whereas Pearson was asking to be regimented or something. I don't know. That's just an assumption. I don't know. But you just want a bit more transparency from the owners to say, we are going to go for this manager because we believe he can get us defending properly. We'll keep more clean sheets. and therefore we'll have a chance to be more competitive in more games, rather than if this guy's coming in. Okay, cool. And then he says all the same nonsense that the last guy said. Oh, I love Watford. Watford's a great club. What doesn't mean a thing to us nowadays, because we hear it all the time. You just kind of like keep your fingers crossed that one of them will be the next manager that keeps us going. But for me personally, it's just transparency. It's like I would want, in a perfect world, I would expect, let's just say we start the season and Patrick Vieira has gone to Crystal Palace. He's had his pre-season. He's come into Crystal Palace. He has got some kind of method in an identity that he's putting forward to Crystal Palace players and fans, and he wants him to come with him on this ride that he's putting out there for them. And it seems to be working. Now, it might not work for the whole season, but it's something that is kind of giving them a new identity away from what Roy Hodgson was doing. A very successful manager, Hodgson, but obviously his way of playing was slightly negative. It worked because Palace could have got relegated the season he came in. They could have got relegated seasons after that because they weren't probably the best squad in the league. But what he's done is he's given them a platform that they now are able to bring in a manager who can try to bring something new to the table. Now, I would say if Patrick Vieira got sacked after 4 or 5 games, that's just not fair. If you've got to basically give them at least, in my opinion, half a season for them to implement their identity. If it doesn't work, or if there's been a problem and there's genuinely a reason why the manager's got sacked because he's I don't know, been tapped up, or he's been mouthing off or whatever behind to the media, I don't know, then that's different. But if he isn't getting the results and he's there to bring a certain identity and it's not working, then I would say at least half a season before you then start making decisions. Because, realistically, the standard of football nowadays, there shouldn't be a team in the position that, like, say, Norwich are in at the moment. That shouldn't be happening. I don't really understand their situation. They still have a very good set of football players there. They shouldn't be doing as badly as they're doing. The same with Newcastle, really. Okay, Benjamin Marion. His question is, who since the start of the Premier League has been the biggest disappointment after a big money move, and who has been the best bargain signing who's flourished? So,
okay,
who have you got, mate?
Well, going back to like the 90s, Thomas Brolin to Leeds for 4.5 million. He'd like a superstar in 92, 94, but he didn't really do anything. So then you got Sergei Rebrov, Francis Jeffers, Aquilani, who went to Liverpool for decent money. Alexis Sanchez from Arsenal to Man U, massive flop. He wasn't a flop at Arsenal, though. Brilliant for Arsenal. But the biggest two for me are Andrei Shevchenko from the AC Milan to Chelsea. I think Chelsea he was sort of he'd hit his prime at AC Milan, and he didn't really come to the English game once you've gone past your prime because of a faster pace and everything, unless you're someone like a freak like Ibrahimovic. And then the main one for me was Juan Sebastian Veron. I think he was the biggest disappointment. And the fact that he got a move to Chelsea as well after they're not really doing much at Man United was just an even bigger thing. So he actually had 2 clubs he went to in the Premier League, and a major flop at both, in my opinion. So one, Sebastian Veron, because he was a quality player in Italy. He was fantastic. Played for Lazio, and we were like winning the league and stuff like that. He played for a great Argentina side, which thankfully didn't win bugger all, which was good. Yeah, he was such a good player, and I was really excited in that when he joined Man United, thinking, oh yeah, he's gonna just be quality. And he saw some very short, couple of glimpses of it, but he was just a huge flop, and it was a lot of money. So Chelsea bought him, and he was a huge flop again. He's the main one for me.
Yeah, I think you're right. I actually put down Shevchenko as well for this. I thought he was just he's like so good back in the day for Milan. It was just like, when he went to Chelsea, it was so exciting, the idea of this player who had been that good. I think Fernando Torres to Chelsea also has to probably be out there as Like maybe it was bad injury or two that led him to his drop off, because he was so good for Liverpool that when he went to Chelsea, you were just thinking, oh, this is interesting. But he was awful there. I've actually put down a non-Premier League player, and that's Freddie Adu. Do you remember him? He
Oh
was
yeah,
he was in the old Football Manager as like a
he was a
wonder
great
kid.
football manager.
Yeah, he was a wonder kid at the age of like 13 or something, and everyone was talking about him every single year. And he actually, I think he got a couple of moves around. I think he signed for Benfica. Could be wrong, but
Yeah, he
the
went to the Portuguese league, didn't he? And then, but yeah, I think he was one. Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
it's more the fact that like I say, if you go back to the Football Manager game, he was meant to be from at the age of like 13. It was ridiculous because you can't even do it
they were
nowadays.
calling him like
But
the next Pele, weren't they? Something
yeah,
like that.
and
He's a
and
Pele.
he was going to be playing the best football like throughout his whole career, and he was going to be playing for 25 years or whatever, because he started so young. He was like a big guy even at the age of like 13, 14. But yeah, he's biggest disappointment in this in the world football. But Shevchenko, it has to be for me the Premier League. Bargain wise, I've got the main man, like one of my favorite players, without a doubt, Eric Cantona. For me, Howard Wilkinson trying to sign Dennis Irwin off of Man United, and instead he sold Eric Cantona for something like 1 million or something like that. It's ridiculous. And Eric Cantona, when he was unfit or when he was suspended, Man United just were nowhere near the same team. He just seemed to bring them all together. Yeah, it's such a shame that he retired so early, but what a player.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, he was world class with Cantona, wasn't he? And a bargain, really. So yeah, definite bargain. Nah, can't fault you in those ones.
Who was your bargain player?
Oh, I went for Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, to be honest with you, because I just thought he was what he did United. He scored goals. He scored lots of goals, and he was a player who just, you never saw like got heard of him complaining. He was the super sub, playing second fiddle. But every time he came on, he scored goals. He scored goals in big games as well. He knew where the back of the net was, and that was the big thing.
Tell you what, he might have a part to play in this next section. From our man Dentos, he's asked us to put together a cult hero 11. And if you're not aware of what a cult hero is, it's basically the player who is not necessarily the best player for the club, but a player who is most loved at club. He's used an example of Rory Delap at Stoke when they used to have that ridiculous throw-in when teams used to kick the ball out for a corner to avoid it going up for a throw, because his throw was just so kind of direct and flat. It was no one knew how to defend it. That was ridiculous that Premier League defenders were getting caught out by that. But yeah, it's crazy. It was. He was an interesting person to have in FPL because he didn't really get as many assists as you thought he might have done from that, because he'd get quite a few flick-ons or it'd be quite a few scrambles. But have you got an 11, mate?
No, not as such. I've just gone for like a select number of players who I thought real sort of cool heroes for their clubs, and I didn't go for that because I found that with some areas, I found there was a lot of players in certain positions, similar positions, generally speaking. But so I didn't go for a full 11, But I named I named about 8 players really who I thought were just really the epitome of that sort of tag. Is how I went through it. Yeah.
Come on then. Who have you got? Who have you got?
Well, this guy, I've got a bit of bias to him because he played for Rotherham for years, but for Man City, Sean Gota, feed the goat, he will score, and he will loved by the City fans, and and just epitomised everything what they were, used to be before they got rich and everything. But yeah, Gota was massive on that. Lad who played for Portsmouth, everyone just talks about him, Mr. Primus. Well, who didn't talk about him when
Limvoy Primus?
Yeah, when you hear Portsmouth, he's the first name that people think of in terms of a player, and I challenge you to say different, because that's who you will remember. You true football fans will think, yeah, definitely. Primus all the way. Wimbledon, the crazy guy. I mean, Vinnie Jones is the man there, isn't he? You know, I know he played at other clubs, but you know, you think Vinnie Jones has got that celeb status now, and what he brought, you know, that crunching tackle in the FA Cup final, which would probably get you sent off today. Steve McMahon just got up and carry on as normal, sort of thing, you know. But yeah, Vinnie Jones was a big sort of cult hero in my opinion. You've already mentioned Cantona at Man United, obviously a cult hero, Solskjaer as well there. But I sort of put then JJ Kocher at Bolton. I mean,
yeah, he's brilliant.
I think he was brilliant as a player as well. But you know, everyone loved the time when they had players like him. Jockey playing for him, but you know, JJ was the man. You know, he was the one on Match of the Day everyone were purring about, and Bolton sort of had players who could play football in the team and stuff like that. So he was a big one. I mean, it's probably quite an obvious one, this next one, but Liverpool, Steven Gerrard and Jamie Carragher, two basically cult heroes for Liverpool. You don't think about Liverpool without thinking about them two sort of players in the more modern game, you know, in the recent years. They were what epitomised Liverpool. I suppose the funny thing about Jamie Carragher is he's actually an Everton fan, so you know, or he was. So
yeah.
But you know, those were like the main ones that I had. You know, I could have gone on for loads more. I know, but you know, you had the likes of Steve Grizovic at Coventry City back when they were in the Premier League, and you know, and whatnot. But yeah, I think you know my favourite one is definitely Mr. Primus and Sean Goethe. They're my favourite two cult heroes.
Nice. I've got an 11, right? So I read this question, and I gave myself a criteria that unfortunately I didn't share with you, State, because it could have been quite a good feature actually. But yeah, what I've done is I've taken current Premier League teams, picked out an individual cult hero. They can only have one per team, and I've got a formation and everything. So I've gone with a 3-5-2, and I'm starting off in goal. Julian Speroni, Crystal Palace. The guy was their player of the season probably every year that he was playing, pretty much. It was either him or Zaha at one point, but he used to wear the jogging bottoms.
Joggers.
And yeah, he was quite a character. It also had his ponytail for a bit, and then it got cut off and all that, David Seaman style. Next player I've got Tony Hibbert of Everton. So die-hard Everton player, definitely not the best player on the pitch, without doubt, but probably the most committed. Always was like an old school footballer, but playing in the early noughties. And I'm pretty sure that when he signed for Everton, I can't imagine many Evertonians being too excited about him, but he had a great career there. The next one was Olaf Melberg at Aston Villa. Reason being is because the guy, you know, 110% all the time. Yeah, I mean, he was determined.
That guy.
Captain. The fact is, the guy was Aston Villa through and through as well. I mean, all these cult heroes pretty much are, but the fact is that he was there when the last time they actually had a real successful team who could compete at nearer the top of the Premier League table, when they had like Agbon Lahore and Ashley Young, Gareth Barry, that kind of team. So the last defender, it was tough because I did want to have Eric Cantona. I did want to have Ole Gunnar Solskjaer in this team, but I had to take them out so I could get this guy in. Dennis Irwin, did actually mention him earlier. Really good defender. Right back, left back, predominantly left back, but could also play right back. Played
got some goals.
Yeah, got forward, but quite professional. Just got on with the job. Never complained. Got the move to United from Oldham. No fanfare or anything, and then left. No fanfare or anything. You know, it was just did his job. Got the trophies and walks away. That kind of guy. Going into midfield, I also have Vinnie Jones, but I have Vinnie Jones for Leeds. So not many people know this of our generation, but Vinnie Jones actually played for Leeds the season they came up to the top division back in the day, and was like, basically it was all about the structure of the team and and how they wanted them to be a little bit harder, a little bit more aggressive. And they brought him in. It all worked perfectly. Leeds went from being a struggling, Division 2 team to getting to the top division at the time, Division 1, now Premier League. Unfortunately, sold him. They didn't think that he'd be able to make it at the top league, which he obviously did with Wimbledon. But yeah, so he was a cult hero at Leeds, made a big impact there. Then I've got Matt Letizia at Southampton. Now, I know the criteria of a cult hero is not the best player, but I probably similar to what you're saying with Gerrard and Carragher. Letizia was the most.
He was Southampton.
Yeah, he was like, the most loyal football player, probably to the detriment of his career overall in his England career. But the fact is, the guy came through the youth team, played for Southampton, was the Southampton's best player for nearly every year that he played, and basically turned Southampton from being a team struggling for relegation. It kept them up every year. The year that he retired was like the first year they got relegated from the Premier League, which was, I wasn't surprised.
It is a bit clear and obvious choice for me as well. I mean, I think Southampton, though, back in those days, probably had a number of cult heroes. Jason Dodd,
Marion Parhas.
Marion Parhas, and Francis Benali.
Yeah.
Everyone loved Benali, and, but yeah, Letizia were the main man, definitely.
Yeah, 100%. Then we got Mark Noble, West Ham. Again, similar to Letizia. His whole career has been at West Ham, and he's probably not the most talented football player that's played for West Ham, but very determined, great penalty taker, someone that came up the divisions with them when they got relegated, West Ham fan, all that kind of stuff. He's, for me, someone who would fall into that category without a doubt. Next one, Jonas Gutierrez, or it could be Jonas Gutierrez, I can't remember now. Another player, this is at Newcastle, another player who I think he got relegated with Newcastle, but then they came back up with them. He got diagnosed with cancer, if I remember rightly. Came back, played for them, scored for them when they were back in the Premier League. And Mike Ashley showed his class and released him at the end of the season. But he made his mark on Newcastle fans. They loved him. Scored some great goals for them. Attacking kind of right winger.
Yeah, he was sort of. He put a lot of effort into Gutierrez.
Yeah, and I think it's like, I think there's another player who has also gone through something like that is like Stilian Petrov. He's not in this, by the way, but I'm just going to say that both of them came through and worked extremely hard. Yeah.
I think even bigger legend at Celtic, probably. I think. Yeah.
Definitely. But Gutierrez, to come back from that and then score. And then to get released, it was a sickener. But, the fact is, like I say, he made his impact. Newcastle fans loved him and still love him. Last midfielder, who arguably could have gone into the striker category, but I put him as a midfielder, as a player that I think is an even bigger cult hero than Sean Goater at Man City, which is Georgi Kinkladze.
Oh, yeah, what a player.
Georgian legend. The only Georgian player I'm sure most of our generation know of. But this guy was incredible. Now, if you've never heard of Georgi Kinkladze and you're listening to this podcast, please just pause now, go onto YouTube, type in Kinkladze, Kinkladze, and just watch and admire the goals he scored in the Premier League for a struggling Man City. This guy was like a Georgian Messi. He really was. And he scored some unbelievable goals. Unfortunately, he just didn't score enough of them. And he wasn't anywhere near as consistent as Messi. But yeah, unbelievable player. My last two strikers, I've got Dirk Kuyt for Liverpool. This was tough because I was tempted to go with Peter Crouch, but I just thought Kuyt was probably more of a cult hero because he was more successful. The whole thing with him was that he would, again, another one who run through walls for the club. You could play him right midfield, left midfield, centre forward. He'd probably even play at the back if they asked him. He just looked like he loved it. And he didn't necessarily have the quality you'd think as a Liverpool player, but he scored a lot of vital goals and he took penalties as well in the vital moments. So he was a player that they loved. And I'm going to leave best till last here. And like I say, it could have been Cantona. There's quite a few strikers I could have gone with, but I've gone with Gianfranco Zola at Chelsea. The reason I've gone with him is because he was such a talented football player. Obviously made his name for Italy and for Parma, but when he came to Chelsea, his career wasn't really that successful at Chelsea compared to, like, say, a Didier Drogba or like a Eden Hazard, but he still left his own imprint on that club with the way he played the game. Scored some quality goals. Maybe didn't win Premier League trophies, and maybe didn't win as much as his kind of talent deserved, but the guy was an absolute gentleman and an absolute superstar. So that's my cult 11.
Brilliant. Zola, that just finishes that off perfectly. That team, what a man. Yeah, can't argue with that. Very good cult 11 there, man. I should have gone down that cult 11 route. Could have really pulled something out of the bag. But I mean, you picked out players that I'd have definitely been considering. Yeah, no, 100%.
Okay, well,
definitely so.
I hope you guys enjoyed this Nasqaa. It's been a long podcast, but ultimately for us, we want to get every question out there. We want to answer everything that came our way. We do, we really, really do appreciate the amount of effort and time that some of you guys went to get those questions. And if you have any more, please send them, and we'll build them up again and maybe do another one of these in the next international break, which won't be until March next year. So we've still got a bit of time now till we get that.
Yeah,
but
definitely so.
Yeah,
definitely.
Just to kind of remind you, our Twitter handles. So States is
at FPL_Northerner, and the
Twitter handle is
FPL_Southerner.
Brilliant, excellent, and it's been a long podcast.
Yeah, no, it's been great. Hopefully, people enjoy it, and as much as we have discussing all these things.
All right, guys, thank you very much for listening, and we'll be back with our normal episode next week.